Chapter 32. Ill Deeds. There are usually a handful of defining moments in a person's life, and the scene that met Joe in the library would be one of his. He folded to the top of the spiral staircase, immediately aware that the air felt wrong, that the silence was oppressive. He sniffed, catching the caustic odour of burnt machinery. Then heard a faint pop and fizzing sound. Joe looked down. At the foot of the stairs lay the smouldering remains of an electronic assistant. Next to them stood a lean woman, surrounded by fog and covered head to toe in a dark, shiny suit, complete with black goggles. In her hand, she held a scroll. Behind her, the rows of meticulously arranged bookshelves had been obliterated, as if a giant hand had swept them aside like dominoes. Clouds of scorched pages and black ash hung in the air. None of this mattered, for Joe's gaze was pinned to the ground in front of the woman, where a small, broken body lay motionless. "Reuben, no!" The words escaped his lips without thought, as shock and anger shot through him. "I'll kill you!" The woman's head snapped up. A charged staff glowed in her other hand. A man appeared from the wreckage, alerted by Joe's cry. He shouted to the woman as two more figures stumbled from the wreckage. 4 on 1. Great. Joe caught a flicker of movement and was relieved to see Sam, Fedor, Jency, and Veronique step into view near the library's entrance, improving his odds of survival. "Look out!" he shouted to them. The man near the bookcases hurled a glowing orb at the newcomers. It let out a high-pitched whine as it rose toward the ceiling, pulsing furiously before erupting in a blast of blinding light and emitting a noise so piercing that everyone without a black suit fell to the floor in agony. The move was the only thing that saved Joe from the woman's missile, which missed him by inches. Clasping his hands to his ears, he retched, choking back rising waves of nausea. The sound weapon landed within Fedor's reach, and instinctively he lashed out. "Don't!" the monk tried to warn him. The boy brought his fist down with a force that would have shattered most devices, but this particular weapon had defenses. As he struck, it discharged its battery in one almighty blast, sending Fedor flying across the room. But his swift action did bring the blinding light and debilitating sound to an end. Sam would not have considered the calm monk to be a man of action, but he now saw another side of their mentor. Jency was on his feet at once. He pointed towards the woman near the stairs. "Sam, Veronique, help Joe and get that scroll." His feet hardly seemed to touch the floor, as he then made for the masked man. Sam struggled onto one elbow and tried not to be sick. "V, you okay?" "Not really." "Fair enough." Sam blinked, trying to clear his vision. "Where's Fedor?" He could hear the concern in her voice. "There's nothing we can do for him right now." Sam glanced towards the door. "This lot's had the better of us once already. It's not going to happen again." He eyed the woman climbing the staircase toward Joe. Time to try something new. Sam placed his hands over his shoulders and flipped onto his feet. Giving his destination a final glance, he leapt as high as he could, raising his knees to his chest, and disappeared. Veronique swiveled her head toward Joe and saw Sam rematerialize in mid-air at the top of the staircase, just as the woman reached it. She whooped when he drove both legs into the woman's chest, sending them flying back down the stairs. Then Veronique folded across the library and caught him. Grabbing the woman's wrist, she then prepared to deliver a kick to her exposed armpit. Instead, she cried out and withdrew her hand in agony. "It's not called a cold suit for nothing, my dear," the woman sneered as she staggered to her feet. She still held the scroll, but her staff had been lost in the fall. "Veronique!" a panicked voice called from above. Joe, IDA bracelet in hand, vaulted over the side of the balcony and vanished. Sam and Veronique waited for agonizing seconds, expecting him to repeat Sam's feat and reappear above the woman, crushing her into the ground. Reappear he did, however slightly to the left of his target, so he crashed into a pile of books. "It looked so easy," he groaned, rolling over in agony. "Beginner's luck," Sam shrugged, leaping toward the woman. Veronique, just a heartbeat behind him. Gen C fed the flame and banished his emotion. He was calm, focused, and deadly. His feet left the ground, and he folded, reappearing beside the man, throwing out his leg to catch his opponent's knee. If they wished to fight dirty, he would oblige. The sound of the impact was unpleasant, but pity was also fodder for the flame. The man fell hard and cried out. Gen C folded again, reappearing in front of him and delivering a sharp blow to his temple. The man slumped, arms raised to protect himself. Gen C continued to fold and attack. He made no quips. It was a short and brutal fight, embarrassingly one-sided. It could hardly be otherwise when one adversary had the knowledge and skill of countless generations. Gen C did not fight often, but when he had to, he was without equal. Gadgets may have leveled the playing field, but he gave his opponent no chance to use them. Eventually the man slumped forward, unconscious. Gen C looked up, just in time to see Sam appear above the staircase. Who taught him that? He smiled at the boy proudly. But the moment of pride cost him dearly. He failed to hear the staff and the blow caught him unaware. A blast of energy knocking him clean off his feet. "Uncle?" A figure bent over his unconscious adversary. Gen C lay shaking on the ground nearby, waiting for the convulsions to pass and praying he did not meet his end before they did. Emotion. Would he ever learn? Icarus Bane drifted in tranquility, floating on a silent sea, happy and carefree. He did not remember how he got here, but that didn't matter now, for he felt warm and safe. He might even go so far as to say, content. Something battered on the silence, a voice hammering at the edges of his restful state. Typical. Then he felt movement, and with it, something else. Pain. His boat tipped, rocked and capsized, casting him into violent waters. The calm washed away, and light noise and agony replaced it. "Uncle!" The cry seized his senses, as hard as the hands that shook him. "Please, wake up! You need to move! We must help Mother!" Sam and Veronique drove the woman backward, with a barrage of well-placed kicks. Punching was out of the question, as Veronique's forearm was still numb, and there had yet to be any opportunity to find a weapon in the graveyard of bookshelves. Their opponent was meeting their assault with precision and experience. She was no simple thief. However, she would not be able to overpower the two of them in the debris, so her strategy appeared to be that of defense. Joe found his feet and followed them into the bowels of the archive, hungry for blood. He kept trying to squeeze past to find a way around his friends, but the terrain of broken wood and slippery piles of books was proving difficult to navigate, so he fell back, looking for another way. It was only then that he caught a movement nearby and realized why the woman was so happy to defend herself against the two inexperienced fighters. She was leading them into a trap. Miss Keller had to concede these kids were good. She deflected one kick and barely dodged the next, deliberately giving more ground. Their unexpected battle with that monster of a guard had taken every trick, gadget, and ounce of cunning the four of them could muster, laying waste to the library in the process. She shuddered to think of the history and knowledge that had been lost. Miss Keller did not want to make her retreat look too easy, and she lashed out, catching the girl with the heel of her boot. Fedor's eyes fluttered. His vision was blurry, and his ears rang. He swore. The pain was everywhere. Couldn't have picked up the IDA bracelet first. He swore again. It didn't help the pain, but it did make him feel a bit better. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, certain he felt more than one tooth move. He was lying face down in a pile of wreckage, but could not recall how he had got there, or why every inch of him was on fire. The ringing in his ears was unbearable, and he wiggled his jaw to try and make them pop. More pain. He tested his extremities, flexing arms and legs, then wiggling fingers and toes. All protested, but reluctantly complied. He moved his hips and his ribs, which, it had to be said, had taken an undue amount of punishment of late. Thankfully, they did not appear broken either. Taking a breath, he braced himself and prepared to move. It was just another day in his summer from hell. Joe bit his lip. Now what? Did he try to warn Sam and Veronique? Or would that distract them and give the woman the opening for which she was looking? Or worse, would it cause this mystery person to act in haste and bring more destruction raining down upon them? His eyes flickered between the fight and the stocky figure trying to stay out of their peripheral vision. The man's hands were low, and Joe could not see if he was holding anything. Safe to say that if he were, it wasn't flowers or half-time refreshments. Joe dropped back. He looked around for a memorable spot and saw Reuben's hologlobe, far from home, lying on its side amongst the rubble. Sad, but that'll do. With that landmark firmly set in his mind, he vanished. Icarus Bain had felt better. Much better, in fact. He struggled to his feet with the aid of his earnest niece, only to falter the moment he placed his weight on the damaged knee. He swore. That's no help, came her frustrated remonstration. Icarus looked over at the monk, who lay twitching a few meters away. What a demon. Didn't see that coming. He pointed to a long piece of broken bookshelf nearby. Grab that. The girl bent down and helped him onto the makeshift crutch. Now, give me the staff. Bain held out his hand, not taking his eyes off the monk. We don't have time for that. We need to find Mum. He's not going anywhere. What's the golden rule? The girl sighed. Now? Really? Yes. Never leave an enemy behind you. Exactly. Look at the state of me. Does he look like an enemy you'd like to face? I'm certainly not itching for a second round. Either you finish him, or I will. There was a savage crunch as the staff was smashed in half. Hi there. Fedor swung a chunk of bookshelf across his shoulders and rested both hands on the cudgel. He smiled at the faceless girl, whom he now assumed was the same one he had chased up the mountain a few weeks ago. So, how have you been? Joe materialized on the spiral staircase. Trying not to look at Reuben's broken body, he searched for the woman's staff. He leant over the balcony, scanning the wreckage. Please, please, please. Yes! He spied the short staff in the mess below and rushed down, taking the steps 2 at a time. Beside it lay his IDA bracelet. Fortune does favour the brave. He snatched it up, then bent to retrieve the weapon, and stopped. What if it was coded to its owner and set to deliver a shock, or worse? His outstretched fingers waggled, impatient. His mind was racing. Tick-tock, tick-tock, Joe swore. He looked at the IDA bracelet. That might work. Joe put the bracelet on and gave the small blue button a push. Nanothread erupted from the band and covered his fingers, and then surged up his arm and over his shoulders. It rippled over his shoes and up the back of his neck, stopping at the base of his skull. Joe turned his arms over, examining the shimmering grey and purple armour that now covered his body. He did not see the large red L across his back. This is more like it. He turned his wrist and patted the handle of the staff with the back of his armoured hand. Nothing. Joe heaved a sigh of relief and grabbed it, giving the device a terse examination. He flicked a switch at his thumb, and the tip sprang to life, crackling ominously. The boy grinned. He found a pocket in the armour and stuffed the device in, then grabbed his cruiser. My turn. Fedor regarded the girl. Neither she nor the injured man moved a muscle. The man looked down at the mass of sparks, pops, and shattered circuitry. Well, That wasn't very nice. Those aren't cheap, you know. Where shall we send the bill? His laconic voice told Fedor that he had mocked him at the castle too. The man turned to the girl. Anything else up your sleeve, my dear? I'm afraid I'm all out. The girl took a step back, reaching behind her. Fedor moved at once, swinging the club off his shoulders and placing himself between Jency and the pair in the black suits. His opponent drew out a long coil of black rubber and, turning her body sideways, settled into a fighting stance. She unfurled the silver-tipped whip with a shake, swirling the fog around her. Fedor heard a click as she pressed a button in the handle, and the tip crackled, bouncing off the floor like an electric jumping bean. Fedor swore. Now, now, the man chided. That's no way to speak to a lady. Joe took in the scene. Sam and Veronique had backed the woman into a corner and were pressing her hard. They were exactly where she wanted them, completely oblivious to the figure moving in from the side, who now raised a strange pistol and prepared to fire. Hey, Joe called nervously. The figure halted and spun, swinging the gun in Joe's direction. You dropped something. Joe tossed him a hollow object. The tip of their pistol dipped as the figure looked up and instinctively caught the hollow ring, oblivious to the small green LED blinking on its side. Jesus, what are you wearing and what the hell is this? Joe flicked the switch on the staff and shoved the charged end into his pocket. It leapt from the bottomless pocket ring in his opponent's hand and, hissing ferociously, took him squarely between the eyes. Ha ha, Anatoly, you're a genius, the boy laughed. The victory, however, was short-lived. Falling back, their body convulsing, his foe gave the trigger of the pistol several involuntary tugs. Even with his armor, the first blast knocked Joe off his feet, sending him crashing into the hollow globe. His laughter died. Other shots were fired, scattering books and broken shelves alike. The final blast headed straight for Sam and Veronique. Look out! Sam tried to push the girl away and took the majority of the force in the chest. No one was any the wiser when Anatoly's secret gift kicked in. It reacted instantly, switching to defense mode. Evermod activated the Armor gene. Armadillo scales instantly spread beneath Sam's shirt and diffused the blast before it could do any real damage. There was a ripple of purple neon energy as his crystal-infused femtoglobin responded. Then the mod disappeared. Fedor ducked and rushed forward. The whip whistled over his head. He could feel the air prickling and knew that if the buzzing tip found its mark, he was in trouble. But the girl was now too close to use it, and she spun, aiming a perfect roundhouse kick at his lowered head. Fedor gave ground, allowing her to retreat and recoil the whip. He folded, coming up behind her, but instead of smashing the base of his makeshift club into the back of her head, as he should have, the boy drove his foot into the back of her legs. She rolled forwards, using the momentum to her advantage, and was up again, her whip spinning round. No good deed, he muttered, as the hissing rubber snake shot toward him. This time, Fedor raised his cudgel and allowed her whip to wrap around it. The tip stopped inches from his face, its bright blue charge blurring his vision. Before the girl could uncoil it, Fedor leapt backwards and folded behind the only pair of shelves left standing. There was a loud thump, and the shelves rocked as something hit them. Hard. He let go of the club and peered around the corner. On the other side, the girl, still clinging to the whip, lay unconscious. Sorry about that. Ms. Keller stood in stunned silence. Quite literally. Around her, 4 teenagers lay unconscious. She zipped the scroll into a special pocket in her cold suit and picked her way through the rubble to the stocky youth who lay convulsing on the floor. Bending down, she retrieved the offending pistol. She selected the unresponsive setting on his turner, and the panel changed from blue to purple. It admitted several warning beeps before both the device and boy wearing it disappeared. Inspecting the pistol, she gave the other 3 bodies a thoughtful glance. Jency felt the convulsions growing weaker. he managed to swivel his head to where Fedor had folded and dragged the girl into the bookcase. It was a brilliant move, and the monk felt another swell of pride. Then he saw a woman slip from the wreckage, pistol in hand. He opened his mouth to warn the boy, but the only sound he could manage was a gurgling groan, and he closed his eyes, unable to watch. The stun gun's discharge was followed by a crash, as Fedor was hurled across the room for the second time in 10 minutes. "And who do we have here?" the woman asked. "Well, I may be wrong, but I think this may be the fabled monk. Took me apart in seconds. Truly awesome." The woman bent down to peer at Gen C. "How remarkable," she purred. "We can't kill you then, can we? This is simply too good an opportunity to pass up. I have just the opening for a man of your stature. My exhibit will finally have a star attraction."